Hi, and welcome to the Dingers podcast. I'm your host, Mitch. I'm here with my boys, Jeff and Jake. Jeff, are you like the national sixth grade basketball coach of the year?
I should be. I tell you what, we've had a way better season this year than last year. Last year, it took us the whole season to win a tournament, and we won the last one. This year, we got off to a rough start with our first one, but we've only lost one tournament since then. I think we've won 6 this year, and we got 2 left on the books.
Just getting those ships.
There's been like 3 tournaments where these kids they've shaved 5 years off my life, and with the championship game. I mean, it's nerve-wracking. I started shaking so bad I could barely stand up. My voice starts cracking, but it's fun. It's really cool to see the kids get so excited about what they're doing out there on the court. So it's been more fulfilling for me than I ever thought it would be. I really thought I would have had a couple of these kids duct tape and thrown in a broom closet by now, but it's been fun.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Jake, still sporting the sweet mustache. How's it up in Wisconsin?
It's snowing right now, boys. So can't ditch the winter. What are you gonna do? I mean, that's what we get for living in the Midwest. But yeah, ready for baseball season, whether MLB is here or not. I got my baseball season probably starting up mid to late next month. So excited to get back on the field. And hopefully some warmer weather around the corner here in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Well, we got Go ahead, Mitch.
We got a fun episode for you guys today. We have an interview with Justin Stone, the hitting director for the Chicago Cubs. Got to sit down and have a sweet interview with him that we pre-recorded. But this episode, just like all of our episodes, are presented to you by ChiCitySports.com. If you're interested in all things Chicago sports, this is your place. Go check out the forums, the podcasts. And we also have a YouTube channel at Chi City Sports YouTube channel where you can check out more Dinger videos and more Dinger content on there. And follow us on Twitter at Dinger Cubs. We love interacting with you guys. So jump on and join the conversation with us and talking Cubs baseball. But yeah, we did get some good news today when it comes to the lockout. Like I'm so sick of talking about the lockout, but they actually made some headway today. I would say of just having a meeting that lasted more than 15 minutes. So with that, I mean, we got to just clap and applaud that they could sit down and talk for more than 15 minutes.
Could that 15-minute meeting been an email? I mean,
last week's, yes, I'm sure it could have.
It seems like there are 2 infants that are fighting over the same toy when there's multiple of the same toy, and they can't figure out who's just going to go over to the toy box and get the other one.
Yeah, Jake, how did you feel about what you heard from today?
It's interesting. I'm actually scrolling through Passan's tweets right now to see if I missed anything significant. Some stuff pulled off the table by MLB. The limit to options, they pulled that off the table. They were going to limit it to 5, and they took that away, which, as Passan says, and I agree, that's a big deal. Yeah. That for quality of life, as he says, to use his words. Yeah, I mean, Major League, like to be going up and down, and there's pay. I listened to a podcast last week. There's pay things that are involved in all of those options going back and forth between AAA or AA and the majors. And it seemed like a show of good faith for MLB to put that on the table, but then to pull it off today is a little discouraging. But you wonder if that was a compromise for something else that we haven't heard. So they took that off the table and gave the Players Association something else. But I'll say this: I mean, it's kind of BS that it took this long. Obviously, that goes without saying, to have a meeting this long. I haven't seen anything, but you'd expect did they announce that they're meeting again tomorrow? Like, let's keep this momentum going. Good.
Yep, they're meeting again tomorrow, I think at noon. Okay. I did see that they also pulled off because they want to limit the amount of roster spots in the minors from like 180 to 150, and they pulled that off and said they won't be cutting roster spots available to major league rosters or minor league rosters. So I mean, that was, I think, was good. I think in the last 2 weeks, we've had a lot of dealings when it comes to minor league guys, and a lot of things kind of being brought to light, people getting to see really what the minor leaguers go through. And then when you kind of hear that the major league teams kind of view them as, well, you're playing for an opportunity to make it to the majors. So that's why we don't have to pay you for spring training. And then, oh, well, let's just cut opportunities and just cut those players and cut our roster down. You saw a lot of blowback, and the owners did not look good. And so I think it was good faith today that they kind of pulled that off too, as well, to show, hey, we are going to try to work with you. So I thought that was good.
Go ahead, Jake.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just curious. I can't remember how many opportunities were cut last year when they got rid of a lot of minor league teams and towns all over the country.
They cut a lot of teams. And it's not just the players' opportunities, right? There's jobs and local dollars for those communities. Help. And fans. You're fostering fans. Like, I think about I've got family up in near Green Bay. So Appleton has a team up there, the Timber Rattlers. I think that's high A for the Brewers. And I think about, my brother-in-law we're probably going to go to a game this summer, and it'll be the first baseball game that his son goes to. I think he's a little over 2 years old now. And that'll be a great experience for him, whether or not he remembers it. He probably won't remember it, but that'll be a fun experience for him at this time, at this age. And being in a minor league ballpark is different than being in a major league ballpark, obviously. And it's perfect to foster a great community for young fans. So to pull that opportunity to grow the sport in so many cities just because of money is gross. And I hate to always bring it back to the compound. Like, I don't mean to sound like a compound stan, but they really did have a really awesome segment on, just kind of conversation on last week's podcast. And their producer, Tom, got really fired up about minor league quality of life. And he brought up a good point, something that I've thought for a long time. Minor leaguers, if you're a business owner and you have all this money to buy a major league ball club, how are you not seeing minor league players as a key piece of your investment? How are you not seeing that if you channel money into these players, their quality of life, the production, or the skills and instruction behind the scenes, why are you just like letting them shack up 4 dudes in a living room on inflatable mattresses? Like, how is that going to help you produce a good product? If you really care about the bottom line, why aren't you investing in these players? How many players have fallen by the wayside because they just couldn't put up with the poor quality of living as a minor league player, and they weren't making enough money, so they had to let their dream go? I mean, I would imagine that there's not an insignificant amount of guys who could have at least been impact players, role player guys in the majors that had to quit because of poor pay and poor living.
Yeah, and I was talking to Kevin in our way to school one morning about like all this minor league stuff, and I get from a business standpoint, if the owners are not getting a return on a specific team and they're losing money, and it would cost a lot to rebuild the stadium, because a lot of these minor league stadiums are super old. Like, I remember playing in the Cedar Rapids Colonel Stadium back in the day in high school, and it was pretty run down. They've kind of poured money into it, but not all these teams have the money to be able to do that, especially when you're in a small market team like Minnesota or Milwaukee. So I get that side of it. But my thing is, why are you not investing in at least like the AAA, the AA, the even down maybe the single A? I get like the really low A or the rookie ball, but a lot of times they're playing at the Arizona complex anyway. But when we talk about housing for minor league guys, especially AAA, I have no idea why there isn't like dorm rooms on campus
Right.
Yeah.
at all these facilities. Why has that not been a thing? If I was an owner, I would be doing that, investing in them and having I mean, if all these colleges can do it by getting donors, I guarantee you they are making enough money, the Cubs are, to be able to put in a dorm style apartments right by Principal Park, provide them food, provide them housing, make it comfortable. And I mean, so many people are shuttled back and forth between Iowa and Chicago anyway. I mean, that would be the smart thing to do. I don't know why these teams are not doing that and building new stadiums and putting that right there.
Well, and another thing that you think about, and again, this might have been in the Compound or another podcast I was listening to. You're fostering, you're creating a space to build relationships by creating dorm or communal living for these players. Whether it is like, I lived in a fraternity house my senior year, and it was the best because you walk out of your individual room, you go down to the living area, and there's someone there, at least one person there. Do they want to play video games? You want to, what games on TV? You want to go out and grab a sandwich. You want to walk to the library to get, like, you are creating a place that's going to foster a team building community. And instead, you've got these guys who are paying rent in Iowa. They've got their family, back in wherever they're from, California, and they're trying to send half their paycheck or probably more back to their family to support their family, while they're then trying to hunt down, half a year's worth of rent in Iowa. Like how easy is that to find? I mean, you guys know better than me, but I mean, even in Madison, not easy. Somewhat,
No.
It's a city, but it just is. It's baffling. And I think if there's one thing that can be said, if there's a positive that can be taken out of all of the lockout communication that's been happening, it's that the owners are. I think the owners are being villainized. Not enough. I think it could be talked about more, but I really think that the minor leaguers. I think that's coming more to the forefront. And I think our perspective is kind of skewed because we're so plugged into baseball. But I would say a little bit higher than the casual level of fan are probably starting to understand what minor leaguers have to put up with. And that's a really good thing to have at the forefront.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, we can get back to like just the major league side, because I agree with you. Like, the owners are being made out to be villains, and rightfully so. But they're both, the Players Association and the owners are using whatever leverage they can to get the most for themselves. The only difference is the owners have way more leverage than the players. And the players played their only card this last week. The only leverage that they have is that they control the playoffs right now. So they said, if we do not have a deal, or if we miss games in the regular season, we will not agree to extended playoffs. That was their card that they played, and that's really the only card that they have to play, is that one.
Well, they better get busy and figure something out, because
they said,
shouldn't like position players like be reporting this week normally?
Yeah, I mean, that was like last week. It was supposed to be
like pitchers and catchers, like Wednesday or something is usually the timetable. So
So
that would make like the first minor league game.
I mean,
like
I think
late
the first
next week.
I think the first games were like this next week. So
Yeah.
that
usually
was their
starts end of February, I feel like. So yeah, we're pushing. I feel like maybe this weekend would have been the beginning. And that's so like, it's crazy that I don't even know. I haven't even cared to look because I know that we're not going to get the beginning of spring training. But I do know that the deadline, the commissioner announced the deadline to reach a deal to not miss games is March 5th. So that's next Friday.
Yep.
Yes.
That's why they're meeting every day this week down in Florida to hopefully reach a deal. I mean, and when you look at the owners, like, they have all the other leverage. Like, they can kind of use a lot of things because, I mean, they have the money to be able to sit out and miss some games. And if
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened to the Chris Rose rotation today or yesterday, and Trevor May, who pitches for the Mets, basically came out and said, he's like, I believe that Manfred and the owners, they have a day set of how many games they can miss and still make up all their money with extended playoffs in place. And so they're trying to push and kind of call the players' bluff that they won't agree to this, because they still have something that the players want, is all the other stuff with when it comes to negotiating. So it's gonna be tough for the players. Hopefully we can land the plane and get to a good agreement, and that there will be good faith negotiations from the owners, because that's what we want to see.
Yeah, it's just baffling to me that they went this route with a lockout and not. I feel like they can't afford to miss any this season, because I think it's going to push fans away anyway. I mean, fans we're already paying expensive ticket prices to get to the game, and then once you get into the game, drinks are expensive, food's expensive.
Yeah,
I don't think right now the majority, like for us, yeah, like we live and die baseball, but for the casual fan, they're not affected right now. Even I would say if you miss April, the casual fan is not going to be affected. What's going to be affected is when like May.
Ticket holders.
But I think just when people want to get out and just enjoy a game of baseball on a summer afternoon, and if that isn't there, that's where they'll start losing a whole bunch of fans.
Yeah, I think you've got through like March Madness, and that goes into the first week of April. So you're right. I think as long as there are other sports that because how many fans are really watching the big, like maybe you'll watch opening day if you're casual, and then you'll have it on in the background maybe, or you'll watch on the weekend, but people probably don't really start watching until the weather gets nice and they know that they can go out to Wrigley.
If you're a middle-aged man and you've got all the kids you want and you get a vasectomy, you either do it during the first weekend of March Madness or you do it on opening day of baseball, and you have the MLB ticket. That's when you do that stuff.
Noted.
Yeah.
But
I did mine during the Iowa State football game.
Well, I mean, I'd probably hit that weekend too.
I got a ways, so I have to think about that.
But yeah, like, I mean, it is good that they are meeting, and they had a 5-hour meeting today. They're going to meet again tomorrow. And that's where you just got to kind of just got to keep hoping that there's a conversation still be happening between the two. With any relationship, when they start breaking down and stop talking, that's usually when problems happen. So we want them to keep talking. Like,
yes.
Why can't they have two sessions, like a morning session that's like 3 hours,
honestly,
and an afternoon session that's like 3?
That's honestly,
maybe 4.
Yeah, take a break. Hey, work it like a full-time job, like the rest of us have to do.
Right? I love it when I hear a waitress say she's had to work a double, and then you find out the double means she worked an 8-hour day, and I'm like, I do that every day.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, a real double is no fun. I've had to do
that,
but yeah, it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm encouraged. Like I sent out that tweet last night. I said I'm going to bed hoping for positive dreams on MLB news, and I think today was as positive as you're going to get. Like, obviously they weren't going to reach a deal today. I mean, there was no groundwork laid to get a deal in place, but I am. If we see another long meeting tomorrow, I feel confident that that something will get done by the end of this week, and I think that's been the goal all along. I mean, I have sources. I don't know if he probably won't listen to this, but I have sources that said one first baseman texted another first baseman that they were all just going to be in their spring training locations, under the assumption that a deal was going to be made as soon as spring training games were about to be missed. Yeah. So as soon as I heard that, and like it was pretty reputable, I was like, okay, that's I kind of no, it was a couple weeks ago, but
But no, do you think Friday afternoon there'll be a deal? Should we start selling squares?
No. They'll probably announce something. Actually, no. Why wouldn't they announce it right after the deal is made, right? So
Yeah.
hopefully, Friday afternoon.
That'd be great.
I'm not a betting man, but I'd feel good about that.
Well, my question for you guys was, let's say the lockout ends tomorrow. What's the first thing you do?
For the Cubs?
No, just what do you do? It's the first thing you're gonna do.
Well, I'm gonna try to figure out if the marquee network's gonna have spring training games on, or if I'm gonna have to watch the American Cornhole Championships again.
I'm
trying to figure out how to watch the
my
games.
yeah. I'm getting my my fantasy baseball leagues going again, of which I have at least one open spot. So if either of you guys, Kevin's in the chat. No, you guys are out. Okay, easy enough.
I cannot.
Listeners, reach out to me.
I may be out. I might be in. I mean, I don't know. I could maybe dabble in some fantasy baseball.
Kevin says he gets his Cubs hat out of the closet. Kevin, you've had your hat out of the closet. You've been wearing it on these podcasts. Come on now.
Yeah. What do you think the Cubs? What would you say the Cubs' first thing that they should do? The lockout ends. What's the first thing that they should do?
Left-handed at bat.
Yeah.
A strong, serviceable utility infielder.
Re-sign Contreras.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me, but I think it's going to be something. I think
shore up a bullpen.
I think it's going to be a smaller move, like a bullpen piece, or like a utility infielder. Like Jose Iglesias is available, or Jonathan VR. I'd prefer VR.
Yeah.
I think a Jonathan VR deal, I think would pique fans' interest. And then if you really want to pull the fans back in, you sign Andrew Chafin. Yeah, you sign Andrew Chafin.
Yeah, that would be a sweet right away. Get Chafin back in. Fans,
and it makes sense. It makes sense for the team to bring him back into the bullpen.
Yeah,
and you bring back a lot of goodwill immediately. So it's a good
fan favorite.
Good move for the team and a good move for the fans for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mitch? What do you think?
I mean, I think that they should do something. Either sign Contreras. Hopefully, they have a deal done with that, or go out and get like an Andrew Chafin, something to like really get the fans back in. Like I am really almost against the Correa signing. Like I'm over that. I think now, like I want them to get a serviceable infielder that can play alongside Horner at short. And with the DH coming, I mean, that's where you can kind of play a little bit around. Like you can take some chances on some guys that could have a bounce back year. Like I love the Clint Frazier deal. More and more I think about that. Like I think he's going to have a great season. I think they're going to be able to flip him. And then when that time comes, when the Cubs are going to start buying, like they'll have everything in place to be able to do that.
See, I think Frazier is young enough that if he works out and you believe what you're seeing, then you hold on to him.
Yeah.
And if the guy puts up like a 250 season with like 20 bombs, I'm happy with that. Like that's a great find. Kevin brings up a good question. He said, say that the deal is reached and announced on Friday at 4 p.m. When do free agents start signing? 4:05 on Friday, Saturday, or wait until Monday? And that's a good question.
Yeah,
that's a good question. I mean, I don't think it's going to be right out the gate, but I think when the deal is announced, they will announce when free agency starts back up.
Yeah, that'd be awesome if like deal is signed and instantly like Correa like signs with somebody.
I think you're going to see moves immediately when that window opens up. I think it's going to be a frenzy. And I think that for as crappy as the lockout was for Major League Baseball, this, like we saw the scramble before the lockout, I think we're going to see that again. And I think it's going to be honestly a really good way to kick off the baseball season.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we will be excited and we'll be right here ready to break all the news and talk about all the signings when that happens. But I mean, some good things that are happening is a lot of our minor leaguers have been in Mesa. They've been working out together. There was a picture today of David Ross there taking in a little bit of the action and watching some of those guys work out. The spring training hats dropped. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the spring training hats? I'm not a real fan. I'm not going to cop one of those. I think it's just too busy of blue. There's not like something needs to break the hat with the.
They got rid of the white. They got rid of the white, and if they had left the white, I think it'd have been good. But in all the spring training hats, the patches are two-tone, the main team colors, and it just happens for the Cubs. Sometimes red and blue. Like that's why there's on your hat and my hat, Mitch. That's why the Cubs have that white, because otherwise it vibrates a little bit. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a bummer because I've got that same black Cubs trucker hat that you have. It's on the bike right behind me here. So like
nothing like a graphic designer on staff.
Yeah,
hey, I was like, of course I'm going to get nerdy about it. But
send in your logos for next year.
I've been meaning to. Like one of the things that I want to do is actually in these these notebooks that I use, I want to just sketch bear faces, and I need to do that. I need to make myself draw a bear face every day with the intention of like creating a new Cubs logo because. And I'm sorry, we're going way over what we thought we were before the Stone interview. But the last thing I want to say is my buddies texted me about it today, and they agreed that the Brewers one, unfortunately, looks good. Objectively, it looks good. And I said when the Brewers unveiled their new branding, which they needed from their old jerseys, they did a really good job, guys. Yep. I mean, all the extra patches they have are killer, and it's tough. The Cubs' identity is like so cemented that like you can't really make alternates, as we've seen, without fans being like, I don't like it. So it's a bummer because I do like a good trucker hat, but it's gonna be cool to see them. Are they actually gonna wear those on the field? Are they actually gonna wear trucker hats on the field?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't see them wearing that. But yeah, I agree with you. The Brewers with the little wheat thing that makes up the baseball. Well done by them. I will say for us being in Iowa and really close, the Iowa Cubs will kick off in Principal Park on April 12th. We will definitely be there for opening night, April 12th, watching Brennan Davis and the boys taking action. But we will be up in the press box, so we'll have our media passes up there. So we'll be bringing you all the Iowa Cubs action if there is no Chicago Cubs to be talking about if the season does get delayed. So, but yeah, thanks. We are going to bring in Justin Stone interview. Great interview. He is the hitting director for the Chicago Cubs. Very, very smart man. And it was a great interview. So tune in. Hope you enjoy it. Here is Justin Stone. Chicago Cubs to the Dingers podcast. Justin, welcome to the Dingers podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mitch.
Now, Justin and I have something in common. We're big CrossFitters and we love CrossFitting. How long have you been doing CrossFit, Justin?
Oh man, well, I don't do it since I took the Cubs job. I don't do it much anymore. But I was a competitor up until becoming full-time for the Cubs. So,
okay.
Got up as high as like 350th in the world. It was hard to crack that top 200. That's pretty much like just doing full-time CrossFit. And I was doing it during my lunch break while I was running my business over at Elite Baseball Trade. But my oldest daughter, who is 10, is super involved in it. And at the time when she was kind of growing up around when I was working from the office at home, etc., I would take her to the gym with me, and she started doing handstand push-ups at 3, ran her first 5K at 4, and there's a couple online CrossFit competitions for children that correspond with the Open. And so she was the national champ the last 2 years and got second in the world last year. So she's really into it.
Yeah,
she's
I was actually
on the ring and bar muscle ups right now, and handstand walks, like stuff that took me years really to learn and be proficient at. Kids can just pick it up so much faster. And I'm a huge advocate for it. My youngest daughter, 7, is doing it now too. Whole family does it. My wife does it too, but we're a big gym family. I have an outdoor gym at home. I have an indoor gym at home, and I own a gym in my facility. So I told my daughters, like, you're like the only girl in the world that has 3
Yeah. Yep. Now I'm a level 2 CrossFit coach. I've been doing coaching for 8 years, CrossFitting for 9 years. And actually the one I was stalking you a little bit on your Instagram and saw your daughter did one of the competitions, the Future Fittest.
Yeah.
And the gym owner, my gym owner, is the guy who runs that and who owns that, the Future Fittest.
Oh,
and
nice.
Runs it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mike Mogard, he made it to the CrossFit Games back in, I can't even remember, like 2013.
His kids are really good too.
Yeah, Jamin, that's like he's amazing. Like they lived in Brunei, Asia for his first 8 years of his life, and now he's moved over here and started doing American sports like wrestling and baseball. In the transition of being able to have body awareness and strength, like he's picking up these sports so quickly because of that. And I'm sure your daughter,
it's same thing. Yeah,
just,
I'm a huge advocate
crazy
for multiple sports, and kids doing CrossFit, wrestling, and gymnastics are great translators to every sport. It's but it's clear, like, she's just way more physical than kids her age, and it shows up on the field when she's doing her different sports.
Yep. Now, is she doing the Open this year? Because it's coming up right here.
Without me, but yeah.
I'm getting excited, getting pumped for the Open, trying to get in shape, cut my eating, and get some things right before the Open so I can place better than last year. But yeah, you're the director of hitting for the Chicago Cubs. Can you kind of tell me the road that led you to your position where you are currently?
You're going to need about 5 episodes for
that. Yeah, I know. The short and condensed version.
Yeah, it was a long road. I didn't play a day of professional baseball. I think my niche in the industry is I have a master's degree in human kinetics, and I've really paired that of integrating biomechanics with technology, with human movement, and making all of those 3 things mesh into how I teach hitters in a very unique way, really individualizing each player's program. It starts with a foundational movement assessment that you would do. There's several different companies that do them out there, like FCS, SFMA. It's a lot of principles of that, but kind of tailored directly to hitting. And I kind of grabbed at a bunch of things that I thought related to it from these different programs and made it my own. So we take a very foundational approach to the way we teach our hitters. But my first coaching job was at the Division I level. I was 22 years old and probably way more responsibility than I was ready for at the time. But it's opened up every door for me since then. I spent some time doing a lot of different jobs in the White Sox organization before I had children. I spent time as a lot of people don't know this about me. I was a high school English teacher for 4 years and a high school coach. And then
I'm a teacher myself, and I've coached high school baseball as a head coach. So right up my alley.
Yeah. And then for 11 years now, I've owned Elite Baseball Training, which is, we're known kind of on the forefront of pushing new technologies that are getting into baseball, integrating that with our training. We have a full research biomechanics lab. We're doing a lot of cutting edge, state-of-the-art stuff that I've brought over with me, large in part to what we're doing with the Chicago Cubs. So it's one of the bigger baseball academies in the United States. And it's, every day in there, you have the full spectrum of baseball, from T-ball players to major league players. And I used to tell the story that during COVID, the players were working out in my facility because they were locked out of all the big league camps and stadiums. And so it wouldn't be uncommon to see Nico Horner and Jason Hayward playing catch out in my parking lot while kids are being dropped off for lessons, and seeing, their favorite player out there literally in a parking lot playing long toss. So pretty cool environment.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about technology. And so we had Lance Brozdowski from the Marquee Sports Network on just a couple of weeks ago. And we asked him this question because he's really big into pitching and technology and getting all the data when it comes to pitching. And we see Rapsodo out there. We see TrackMan. We see technology kind of really advancing in the pitching side. Where do you see the technology when it comes to the hitting side? I know I've read an article where you kind of created this biotech cage with a whole bunch of cameras to be able to measure with sensors, everything that's going on in the swing. One is that kind of throughout baseball now, or where do you see technology when it comes to hitting?
Yeah, I think everybody largely has probably the same things in their lab. I'm guessing half the teams in baseball probably are using force plates now, and I had the first like batter's box size force plates, and I actually took my own to Cubs spring training when I was a consultant. And so the Cubs were the first pro team to use that. Bat sensors, wearable technology is probably with every team. We probably lead the way in markerless motion capture, and we rely on that a lot. But with any piece of technology, I think it's not what you are using, it's how you are using it and what you can derive from it. Like having, and I consulted for close to a dozen teams before I was full-time with the Cubs. And that's what I would do. I go around technology training, showing teams how they could integrate this into their own systems. And ultimately, it's like it comes down to who is running it and what can they get out of it. If you have it and you don't know what the data means or how you can apply it to make players better, then it's just data, right? So you got to be able to contextualize it and actually make it actionable. And that's something that we feel like we have a really strong marriage of having traditional baseball being taught. Not everything we do is we do a lot of progressive things. Like we have a really progressive, really smart staff, but we pair that with a lot of like some old school things that have existed in baseball for 100 years. I feel like we can speed up the player development process is just everything we do has a measurement behind it. And we look at that very closely to see when we need to pivot. This isn't working. We're going to go a different direction, or, we are on the right track. That real-time feedback is invaluable. And it just strengthens player buy-in when you're trying to get a message across to them of, we can help you with this. Here's how we're going to do it. And here's how we're going to measure it. And then when they see that measurement and that result in an improvement, that you've got them. That's, in a pro organization, when these guys are playing for their livelihood, you would be surprised that like buy-in isn't automatic. Like it's something that's earned. And I feel like the technology certainly helps us get through that process faster and gain trust.
Now, when you talk about the force plates, like I know what you're talking about. I've seen your videos. For my listeners who don't know what the force plates, can you explain that to them a little bit of what that is and what that technology does and how you use it?
Yeah, we have a force plate. It's more or less a platform, but think of the size of a batter's box. We have a small plate on the back foot because everybody starts their back foot relatively in the same place, but the front foot's going to have a ton of variability in terms of where it lands. So the front plate is huge and takes up the rest of the batter's box. It allows us to measure ground reaction force, speed of rate of force development, things that translate into bat speed and exit velocity, but also adjustability, meaning I could see how fast leg-to-leg transfer is, how well a player can adjust to off-speed pitches by buying time in their front leg. So you see a lot about timing, a lot of going into styles of the hitter. If a hitter has poor back leg stability of holding energy into the ground, you don't want to have a big, long striding mechanism because they're just not going to be able to control their body in it. So it allows us to say, this is what you're doing well in the batter's box. These are the assets you bring into the batter's box. Here's the style that we feel like is probably going to fit you best based on what you do well and what you don't do as well.
Okay, great. Now with all this technology, like, do you ever, like, being a high school baseball coach and working especially with youth? I have a daughter who's 9 and a son who's 7, and I help coach their programs. And I'm living in Iowa, live really close to the Iowa Cubs in Des Moines. Do you think the problem that I have as a coach a lot of times is there's this technology that I would love to be able to use and implement and be able to get the data to be able to help high school kids on down to younger kids in Little League. Do you ever see that technology getting reasonable price? Or, I mean, there's not a lot of facilities in Iowa. There's perfect games. But for the majority of athletes that are youth, they don't have those type of things. So what do you think they can use to be able to maybe get the data that they want, or to be able to see the things that they can to improve?
Yeah, we get a ton of information from the bat sensors, and those are readily available and affordable at like $100 for a sensor. And there is a ton of information that you can derive from that. Again, beyond just like the standard measurements of your attack angle. That's the angle in which your bat is meeting the ball at contact. Your bat speed, that's a really important precursor to exit velocity. Time to contact, I got to be able to get my swing off in a short enough window where I can make a good decision about the pitch and flight. So those are things that are pretty easy to understand, but just the deeper you get into analytics, you can derive some really strong cause and effect of the ball bat collision and how the swing really starts. So for me, first move is everything. First move is really going to be it's going to show what's going to end up happening with the ball bat collision, either good or bad. How long my barrel can stay on plane to the ball, the distance in which my barrel can travel, because more times than not, timing is the most difficult thing in hitting, and it's not perfect. So if we can buy time on either side of timing, both getting on plane to the ball early and keeping the bat going forward towards the pitcher as far as possible, you're buying time. You're allowing productive hits on mistimed swings. So you can infer that all from a bat sensor. Yeah. And the more you use it, and if you want to do some studying on your own, you can really decide whether is my first move correct and putting me on the right plane, on the right path to be in the zone as far as possible.
Awesome. Now I've been really interested in being a CrossFitter and being a coach, in knowing what your job is, but knowing also that you're really big into understanding how the body moves and how to generate the most power it has. How closely do you work with the strength and conditioning, thinking of it as that maybe your sensors are telling you that, hey, this person isn't loading up his hamstring when he's getting ready to load on his back foot to be able to drive forward? Are you then working with the strength and conditioning player or guy with certain players, like, hey, this guy needs to, especially being an athlete, and I didn't have CrossFit growing up. I didn't have it when I was in college playing college baseball. And I wish I did. I was like, man, I wish I could go back and have the strength and the athleticism I do now back then. That a lot of muscles just become dormant because I didn't know how to use them. And now I know how to use them. Do you get to work alongside the strength and conditioning team with the Cubs?
Yeah, we do. That's part of my roles in the director is I go across departments a lot. And if you're in a big corporation, in a big business, you're like, well, that makes sense. All the departments need to talk to one another. But you'd be surprised how siloed baseball has and still is in a lot of cases. And that's something that, from Jed on down, we have been trying to knock those walls down and getting better at it as we've gone. So I do a lot of work cross department, and based on the players' data that we do, like an initial lab session when they come in, do their movement assessment, those areas that are deficient, I write a plan up, send it over to the HP department. They're well versed in it. These are something that we've been doing in cahoots with each other for quite some time now. And there's been stability in our staff too. We had a lot of new faces 3 years ago now, and we've all been together for this time period. And that time just builds these things stronger as you poke holes in your own system, find ways that we can be more efficient, become better. And that's one of the ways that we've achieved that. And beyond just working with HP, it's like some of the most fulfilling pieces of what I do and the job behind the scenes is, we're heavily involved in PD. We're trying to make our players better, and we're trying to do that as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. But I really enjoy the amateur draft aspect of it, player acquisition. Those are things that I really dig into and get to cross departments that way too. And that's one of the most fulfilling pieces of the job.
What all goes into the movement assessment? Like, being a coach and I have a new athlete coming in, like there's certain things that I do just like, okay, I'm going to have them squat and look and see how their mobility is. I might put a PVC pipe in their hand and have them go overhead and do an overhead squat just to check mobility. And there's points of performance that I'm looking for to see if there's mobility issues. Are those the type of things that you're doing? Or it might look different with a swing. What are those things that you're kind of looking for?
Yeah, we do an overhead squat as well. I think that's just probably if I had to choose one lift for baseball players, it would be the overhead squat. If there's one assessment that just tells you overall body mobility, it's the overhead squat.
I remember my very first one. I fell over.
Yeah, it's rough. It's we've been scared in baseball to do anything overhead, and that's led to a lot of like scapular instability, which is really crucial for throwers. And you know, overhead squat would need to be trained. I wouldn't say that's being done worldwide, in baseball, but if it is done properly, it's a really effective lift. But no, the stuff we're doing is a little more hitting related. We'll do a single leg balance, both with eyes open, eyes closed. You're looking at lower body stability, like ankle dorsiflexion and ankle stability is huge, and be able to hold the ground and control the body. Because remember, we're on one leg for a significant period of time with the stride foot in the air. So you got to have body control, and you got to have stability into the ground, and the ankle is a big piece of that. Thoracic rotation, degrees of rotation. That tells me a lot about how big the rope is in the center of a person's body. That rope needs to be stretched tight before I'm able to get my swing off. Otherwise, the body just continues into a loading mechanism when it should be turning. So that's an important one for us. It tells us like how much mobility do you have, which is going to require X amount of strength to stabilize said mobility. So if you think of your long, lanky athletes, usually athletes that are skinnier and younger, haven't gone through the maturation process yet, that tends to be an issue of why players' swings will be longer, is because just they can't control their level of mobility yet through strength. Same thing with the hips, internal, external rotation. That's going to show me angle of the stride, how their lower body should work in the turn. So it gives us a lot of insight just on day one of, I have a pretty good idea what this player's mechanics are going to look like or should look like, because I know how you move. And we take a very human movement based approach and do a lot of work with our hitters without a bat in their hand, of just making them quality movers. And we move that program into the HP spectrum, where they're doing it every time they come into the gym.
And I like that you said that, because like, even thinking about like listeners that might have kids that are starting baseball, like that's a lot of times, even for myself, I catch myself trying to teach my son a swing and fine tune his swing when he doesn't necessarily have the strength there to stabilize everything. So then his arms are trying to move really, really fast because he doesn't have the lat strength to be able to keep it down and keep it locked in. And so then it makes his swing really long. And just to recognize that and to understand, like, they're still developing, just like, I mean, major league athletes, they're still trying to figure out how to perfect the swing, and they're never going to. There's not a perfect swing in baseball. And so just learning their body and getting body awareness, I think is huge, just to teach that. I'm really big into growth mindset, and I'm a teacher. I teach that to my students all the time. For you, has there been a point, and I'm sure there has, where you've kind of really learned a big, huge nugget since even becoming the hitting director of the Chicago Cubs? When has there been time, maybe it's talking to a former Cub, or just a nugget that you've taken away, like, man, this is where I'm going to apply this and really help this organization?
I mean, I've learned a ton. I didn't spend any time in professional baseball to this degree before. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is you have to be very self-critical and a very good self-evaluator. So I spent the entire last year, because remember, my first year, we really didn't do anything. It was COVID year. So you have this plan on paper and you're ready to execute it. You think it's going to go great. And then my job last year was to be boots on the ground at the affiliates as much as I could to poke holes in my own system. And I did a very good job of that. And it had a lot of holes. So I feel like we're in a really good place right now of, again, you hear me use that word efficient, and it's really what it is, of becoming more of we're a large organization. So if it's really easy to have holes in the dam, and if you don't plug them, it can get, spin on you pretty quickly. So I think that over the last year, I've learned to delegate more, take a way more critical view of our own system and see where we can strengthen it. Where previously in a facility, if a major league player came into my building, I would set up the tech that day. I would be the one doing the movement assessment. I would run the lab. I would break down the data. I would go over it with the player. I would create some sort of action plan. And then usually I'd be the one training them too. That's not scalable for 120 people. I can't do that with every one of our people. So I have to think of how can we use very similar tools, but allow us to scale this over a much larger group in as short of a time frame as possible.
Awesome. Now we've seen a big, huge change within Major League Baseball when it comes to pitching, with velocity, pitchers throwing a lot harder and working up in the zone. How have you, as a hitting director, had to adjust to that? Is there big things that you've had to do when it comes to them making that adjustment and the miles per hour jumping so much in the last few years?
Yeah, I think you're seeing moves being smaller. I think there was a period of time where leg kicks were just getting bigger and bigger, hand moves were bigger and bigger. Like, you just don't have time, and you want to be repeatable. Like, can I be repeatable? Can I land in a strong hitting position? Again, being able to repeat that. And can I get my swing off in a very short window? So I think you're seeing moves coming back to being a little bit smaller. And then we have to be just way more keen to swing plane with the four-seam fastball at the top of the zone. So when you look at the analytics, and if you got a player that has really high in-zone whiff numbers on fastballs, there's likely a path or plane issue. And then we have the technology. We can really diagnose and pinpoint it and take it to the player and say that this is an area that we can significantly reduce your in-zone swing and miss, which, of course, putting more balls in play with guys that have really good exit velocity, which most pro players do. And if you're putting the ball or the barrel on the ball more often, production obviously is going to rise.
Awesome. Now let's get a little bit into the Cubs. What do you see as the organization strength when it comes to hitting? We've seen kind of a little bit of a shift of trying to find some more contact bats in the lineup. We've been really, we've loved Rizzo. We've loved all these guys. We've loved Bryant, but they've had a lot of pop, but a lot of swing and miss. Now we've seen the shift to a little bit more contact bats. Do you think that is kind of a direction the organization's going? And what is kind of like a strength that you would say overall when it comes to hitting with the Cubs?
No, I think we're trying to create a sustainable offense, a consistent offense. I think every team would say the same thing. It's not unique to the Cubs. I would say the overall strength, though, is the ability to individualize to each player and to get as much out of their potential. We're not asking Nick Madrigal to hit 35 home runs this year. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. But how can we make Nick the best version of Nick? And I think we've had pretty clear goals that we communicate in a two-way form with the player to set those goals, like have a clear understanding of what are we trying to accomplish and how are we going to get there. And that we've been able to scale across the entire organization. That's something I'm really proud of.
Awesome. Now, being close to Des Moines, watching the Iowa Cubs at the end of the year, we got to watch Brennan Davis, and he just lit up this last year. What is it in his swing that we've kind of seen a little bit of change within his swing from when he first came to where he is now? What is it about his swing that really kind of just jumped this year?
But one, there's certain players on every organization, and every team has a few of them, but the ball just sounds different coming off the bat. Like, he hits the ball incredibly hard, and one of the top three in our organization in terms of exit velocity. So that means you have productive mishits too, right? He puts the ball in the air, productive mishits, meaning even if he doesn't catch the ball perfectly, there's still a double that we can get out of that just because he hits the ball so hard. I think Brennan has done an outstanding job of learning himself. All hitters, they want to be good. They want to be good in a hurry. And so they grasp with a lot of ideas of thinking that there's going to be some magic pill or magic bullet. Like, this is going to be the breakthrough thing for me. And Brennan has gone the exact opposite directions. Like, here's my core values. These are 2 or 3 things I really believe in. I'm going to put them in a circle this small, and anything outside the wall of this circle, outside the perimeter, that we can grasp for. We want to put it in the circle when we're not going as well, because that's going to be the magic thing that gets me out. That's just noise. And he's being able to block that out. And that's just part of the maturation process of a hitter. But it's shown with him. He knows what he believes in. He knows what he needs to do to be successful, being in pro ball now long enough, albeit, with a lot of injuries. He hasn't had that many professional at-bats. And for him to be in the place that he is, you're talking about a AAA player But if you go back and look at his like career at bats at the minor league level, there are not very many, right? So just tremendous amount of upside with a player that's done it that much in that little time.
Yeah, towards the end of last year, I got to go down and watch the Iowa Cubs when they were playing the Royals affiliate, and it had Bobby Witt Jr. on, and the batting practice that he put on and Davis, like there was a definite, it sounds different off this bat than anybody else that took batting practice that day. And so, yeah, you definitely.
I've seen him the last couple of days too, and he's even better. Like it's
awesome.
It's really exciting to watch him, and he's a really confident individual right now too, and in a good way. You know, that can go a different direction with some players if you're watching from the outside or listening to me say that he's really confident right now. But he's a guy on a mission. Like he knows that the future of the Cubs is going to be very bright, and likely he's going to be a big part of that.
How closely do you work with like the minor leagues? Like, are you traveling a lot throughout the minor leagues during the season, or like how close are you working with them?
Yeah, it was nonstop. I was on the road for 6 months.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, since the trade deadline, a lot of Cubs fans have kind of shifted their focus to really digging into who do we have as prospects. And we've on our podcast really kind of dug in and want to just highlight those guys because they're going to be the future. And we're super excited, and there's a ton of them. Is there any of them that, like, I mean, you don't need to get maybe specific, but like, is there a group that you're like, man, this is going to be it. This is their athleticism and their work ethic. Just, they're going to do big things.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this for the trades that happened. The trades that happened were amongst a very similar age group. So we've added a lot of talent at that particular age group. I'll say, not to get into specific players, you can read the prospect lists, and it's been pretty well documented, like who people on the outside are excited about. And but the teams that we have at Myrtle Beach and South Bend, like I was saying today to some of our staff, like it's going to be just hard to win a job on those teams because we are so good and so deep that it's going to be really competitive to, you know, who's going to get the most at bats at these different positions. So that's a good thing to say, that the depth of our minor league system is certainly in a different spot. And Jed was really aggressive at the trade deadline, and there were some people that I'm sure lifelong Cubs fans were like, what is going on? My own daughter, I was in the cage that day in Arizona, and my daughter FaceTimes me. When you do that, like, she knows I'm at work. She's FaceTiming me. It's something important. I need to pick this up. She goes, Dad, what are you doing? You're trading all the good players. So I'm sure Cubs fandom was probably in a similar position. But yeah, I know at the end of a trade, you don't sometimes see for 2 or 3 years down the road. But if you're a Cubs fan, do some digging on some of these players, because they're exciting. They're hungry. And we spent money this year on keeping a core group of prospects in Arizona all year, which hasn't ever happened before. And it paid dividends. Our guys are just way more physical. They're in a good spot. They're with our coaches. So just really happy with the outcome and thankful that the organization saw that this is a step that we can make that can be a competitive advantage, and we're going to spend the money to do it. And again, just talking about speeding up the player development process, we've done that.
Yeah, you talked a little bit, I think, earlier about this. How do you make sure that you said it's very individualized, but when you're noticing something, how do you make sure that the Cubs way or your way that you kind of see, how do you get that information passed down to everybody that's around that player, so that player, one, kind of feels loved and encouraged and pushed, but also like supported? How is that message being sent down and across?
Yeah, that's really my job, is when that message goes out and the communication flow of that. And we've spent a lot of time on trying to perfect how that message gets spread around and making sure everybody that needs to know is in the know. And what I say is, like, when you're doing this, we're not throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it sticks. We have to be right, because talking about that trust and buy-in, you mess that up one time and you can lose a player from your system. Like you lose that player, you never get them back. And then they're just on their own. And that's too hard of a road to do on your own. So one thing that I always say is like, we have to be right. And that's really important to us. So anything that we take to a player is going to be well thought out. It's going to be vetted by multiple people. We have, I would say, one of the strongest R&D departments in all of baseball. And so a lot of people have information to put in front of a player, but make sure we're messaging it in the right way that's going to be powerful. Then again, it has to be a two-way conversation. Eventually you want to make this the player's idea so that they have full buy-in in it.
My son loves watching, like when I'm putting him to bed, a lot of times I'll be watching. A lot of times last year we were watching Cubs games while we were kind of putting him to bed, but then we've been watching a lot of times just videos of professional guys just hitting. He loves kind of like analyzing their swing. And like thinking about him, like being a future like hitting instructor, what does it take for somebody that wants to follow your career path? What does it take for them to do that?
Oh, man, I get that question a lot. Like, how do you make a living I get that, like, people coming to my facility, young people, like,
well, because you have our dream.
Great business. Like, how do you do this? I said, man, like I worked 350, 360 days a year. 10, 12-hour days every day, like in the off season when you're really working hard with your players, that's when you're going to make the biggest dividends. Like I'm working 7 days a week. I'd work 7 days a week, and you take off Christmas. I worked New Year's Day. Every other holiday outside of Christmas, I think I was giving lessons on, and I did that for shit pay for a really long time. So you hone your craft by doing it a lot. The experience matters. And every piece of that experience it's making you better. It's helping you grow. And then, having the access to some of the pieces of technology allowed me to use my previous education, in human kinetics, and kind of take it a way that maybe nobody had done, at least in professional baseball, of having the baseball background and the biomechanics background. So having a unique skill set, I won't lie, I mean, that really helps because everybody's looking for that skill set now in pro sports. But the time you spend in a cage working hands-on with players and the hours that you're doing it, being an effective communicator means just as much. It doesn't matter how much you know. If you can't get it across to somebody in a way that they understand and want to be there with you, then it doesn't really matter. So I joke around with this sometimes because, like, in pro sports, the coaches we're looking for are just that. They're effective communicators. They're really smart. They have some sort of technical knowledge, like tech-based, analytics-based. They have to be a movement specialist. So they have to have some background in kinesiology, human movement, et cetera. And a dynamic personality that can just captivate people that will want to be around. If you have all of those things, like, you are an extremely awesome human being and could probably make $1 million doing a lot of different other things. So, like, we're asking these coaches to have these type of skill sets. Yet, baseball coaches are known not to, like, they don't have the highest salaries. It's not like the players' salaries by any stretch of the imagination. So it is hard to find, like, the best people. But I hope I'm not right when I say this. I feel like our staff's in probably the best place that it's ever been. The hard part of that is going to be retaining them because they are just so good.
Yep.
But that's something that, if our players are getting better, then people want your staff members because of it. So we're in a pretty good position, certainly in the minor leagues and in the big leagues. Greg Brown and Johnny Washington, can't say enough for them jumping in right away. I know they're in the lockouts. They've spent a lot of times with our minor league staff too, and wanted to help. They're going to be in Mesa next week, working with our minor league players. So the integration we have just across the board between the minor leagues and the big leagues is seamless. And one thing Greg and I have talked about is, like, if we do this right, he and I, then in 3 years, I should be able to go take his job and he should be able to come down and do my job, and nothing has changed. And that's really what we're trying to get this to.
Yeah. I mean, when I tell my son this, like I said, it's great that you can kind of pick out things in people's swings, but you need to understand that there's a lot of math in and understanding data you're gonna have to learn. So one, it helps him to learn math.
Science, really.
Yeah, I was like, you're gonna have to.
My daughter's like, I don't like science. I was like, well, I'm actually a scientist. She's like, no, you're a baseball coach. I was like, no, that part of it, yes. But what I'm being hired to do is more because of my science background than my baseball background.
Yep. So, yeah, I love what you do, and I love your passion. I think I've been watching your elite baseball facility videos on YouTube for the past 4 or 5 years, and taken a lot of your sequential hitting plan, taken things and applied it and used it a ton of times. So thank you for your passion for baseball and being able to. You do a good job of simplifying it. Like, you're a really smart guy. Like, you have a lot of technology and you're a really smart guy. You can tell that. But the way
my wife would beg to differ with you on that.
But the way you share that message to everybody on those videos, and I'm sure to the players, it's something that they understand, and it's a cue that they need to hear. And that's what is great about it, is that I can take things from your videos, and I'm all about finding the right cue.
Yeah. How do you make the complex really simple? That's really what we're trying to do as baseball coaches.
And so thank you for that. And thank you for your time.
Good luck in the Open. What are you hoping for?
I don't know. We just did a open tester workout, which you should try this workout, or your daughter. It was a 15-minute EMOM of 5 burpees and 5 thrusters it was supposed to be 135.
Eesh. And
it buried. Like, by minute 8, it was downhill bad.
Yeah, well, those are both exercises that get your heart rate up. So there's no height in that one. And if you're doing 135 on the thruster, that's gonna. I went down to 115, and then it buried me pretty hard, pretty fast. Yeah, well, I know my daughter's hoping for anything with burpees. Like, I haven't met anybody that's ever beaten her in burpees, so I think that's what she's hoping for.
Awesome.
Well, it's something we would always watch together, and I won't be able to do that with her this year, but I know she.
Well, tell her good luck. Hopefully she does awesome. But yeah, thanks for joining us on the Dingers podcast. Good luck on the season. Yeah, keep spreading your passion for the game of baseball. It's great.
Yeah, thanks. Go Cubs.
Yep, go Cubs. Thanks. So that was Justin Stone joining us on the Dingers podcast. We really love the interview with Justin. Go check him out at Elite Baseball on Twitter. But thank you for tuning in. That does it for this episode of the Dingers podcast.